2017 model outboard. Very disappointing it failed, but I'll show you what actually happened. I was driving the boat one day and went to trim the motor down and she wouldn't go down, and this is a look at the inside of the cylinder. You can see the little piston follower was actually flipped around a bit. And I think what's actually happened is this guy, he's like the pressure relief part of this piston rod in here, like so. He goes that way actually. I believe this plate has actually, the bolts snapped off. This is let go, and then all of the springs and everything's fallen out and caused major damage to the power trim and tilt piston and the carrier. So fairly new outboard, so very unsure as to why that happened, and it's really annoying. So this cylinder is absolutely toast. It's good for nothing. I'm keeping the electric motor off it and a few other bits and pieces, spare bushes and whatever else. But yeah, I thought I'd post up a video on putting it back together. Pulling it apart was pretty simple, and I'll talk through that as I go through putting it back together. First step, guys, like I said, I've already pulled this out. It's pretty straightforward. The worst part of the whole job was actually pulling the this pin out. I'll just show you that pin here that holds the bottom part of the cylinder in. All the salt and whatnot builds up inside the ram. There's a thread all the way up on the inside. I think it's an 8mm piece of brook rod I used, and I made like a slide hammer up, so you can actually slide hammer and to pull this pin out. It was extremely tight for all the salt and whatnot built up in there. I had to take my bait board off my boat because the motor couldn't tilt up onto the safety stand here. Obviously I took the cowl off so that when I feed the wires for the tilt and trim motor through into here, you can actually get to them. They're just in here, and I'll show you them later. But so yeah, pretty much what's got to come off is the tilt sensor up in there. That's got to come out. There's two little bolts that hold that in, 6mm bolts, and your top pin's got to come out, making sure it's always on that safety stand. Disconnect your wires, pull them back through, and there's a little clip that holds them out of the way here, and then knock your bottom pin out, and then pretty much that whole assembly can come out. Yeah, so guys, what we're doing now is just I just put a little bit of clean grease on that pin. Probably doesn't need it, runs in plastic bushes anyway, but anything on my boat I love putting grease on, because just the salt water kills everything, as we all know. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the top pin, and probably a little bit in this hole here. Yeah, she came all the way from Stillwater in Oklahoma City, this part. I ordered it over online. Took about a week to get here. It was just about $1,800. By the time I paid duty and customs and all the rest, it was about $2,000. So yeah, not a cheap part, and I hope I never ever have to replace this again. It was you shouldn't have to replace this on a modern outboard, but anyway, we're not sure why that failed, but I've had to replace the top engine mounts on this motor too, so something, I think prior to me buying it, it's only 2-year-old, I think something catastrophic's been done to this motor. I don't know, maybe unloading it and hitting the bottom with the leg down or something prior to me getting it, but yeah, I've had a couple of, between the engine mounts and this now, it's been pretty unreal, the failures it's had. Alright, so that's all greased up, and take this over here carefully without dropping it. And I'll probably take the bottom pin. And make sure you get these bushes in each side. Mine came with it. I kept the old ones, but these were brand new, so we'll leave them in. See if we can get this guy in.
A few hours later.
Yeah, many hours later. Yep, that's get a after a bit of awkwardness, it does fit. It does take a bit of getting in though. It's in play. Let him sit there like that for now. Yeah guys, so after it was a bit of jiggling around, but you sort of got to get it in on an angle, get the top in as well, and then it'll drop sort of down to get it aligned with the holes, and then the top can go in. Pretty sure this has got oil, and I'm not sure yet, but I'm going to hook this up and wind it out. It's a bit short at the moment. Prior to doing that, I'm going to finish off the bottom, so we're just going to drive this in with a nice nylon dolly. Exactly like that. Probably a little bit too far. Doesn't really matter, because when we do our bolts and washers up down the bottom here, they'll line up perfectly. That looks pretty darn good there. Yeah, so I was just looking up the torque spec. These are the bolts that come out. I repainted these. The paint had all come off. I had white paint. They're supposed to be black, but big deal. They're a stainless steel A2-70 bolt. And just looking up online, for that sort of bolt, it's saying about 19 foot-pound. So 19 Newton meters, sorry. 19 Newton meters to foot-pound, because my torque wrench is in foot-pound, of course. I've got a feeling it's about 14. I'm using some blue Loctite on them. They had Loctite on them. I just buffed them up when I pulled them out. So it's 13mm socket for these guys. 3/8 drive. Alright, break out this bad boy.
Okay.
Yeah, so guys, just another little tip. When I actually went to fit them, these two little holes here have got to be turned so the hole's facing up. Otherwise the washer won't go into the recess, so you just make sure they're sort of that angle there, like that. I just used these two little punches like that fit in the holes nicely, and because it's all greased up, I just use that to actually put in there and just rotate that shaft around just a little bit. So just something to be aware of. Yep, so got them both in now. Got our tension wrench set to the right tension. Holding the other side obviously so it doesn't turn. Perfect. Go and do this other side here. Just double check each side. That Loctite's very important, you don't want these guys coming out. Beautiful. Perfect. Got that bottom pin in, done up to 14 foot-pound each side with blue Loctite on it. Yeah, just always a good safety precaution. Make sure you got that the locking mechanism in place, and even then I'm not very comfortable being in there, so try not to get in there too much. If that fell, you'd be in a real bad way. Next thing we want to do is hook up this wire. So if you have a look down in here, the wire comes up through this, there's a little hole there, so this bracket here, or this little cable clip, sorry, and this little clip goes over there like that. Again, not very comfortable being under here, just be very careful. Always use grease on all your bolts and fittings. Leave a tiny little bit of slack there. Only just got to be nipped up, that guy. And we'll go and feed this cable through the other side. Just want to make sure you don't hit any, with spanners, don't mark that piston at all. The wires come up through this little bracket here, like so. And you feed this cable through this hole here. nice little split grommet. Open him up, pop him over your cable. Again, hold your tongue the right way and you'll get it in. Like so. So just so for everyone's understanding, if you were to apply positive to this wire and negative to this wire, the motor would go up. So blue is up when it's positive, so blue is the sky. Green, if you applied positive to that and negative to this one, the motor would go down. Green like the grass, so it'll go towards the ground. You can't get this wrong because there's these two wires here are exactly the same colour, so obviously blue to blue and green to green like that. So we just plug those guys in. I've got the best little helper here today helping me. Canolio. That's one. Tuck them back down in there and like so. Yeah, so guys, we just turned the power onto the boat. Let's see what happens. So if we press up, the piston should extend. Look at that. If we press down, it should go in. Beautiful. So all we got to do now is push this cylinder in to position. Carefully inch it up till she lines up pretty well like that. Yeah, so guys, putting the pin in the top, that slotted part faces this side, so on the right hand side of the boat, starboard side, so in like that. You got to line up, there's a hole here that you've got to line up as well with the threaded part in here. And that's about there. Again, don't like being under here, but you know what? It is what it is. You got this little guy here. I'm just going to put a bit of grease on this fella. It goes in to hold that pin. Yeah, g'day guys. So we got our pin in, so that little slot on the other end, it faces to the starboard side of the boat. Make sure you get your locking bolt in. This guy took a little bit of confusion, but he actually goes that way. And let's put some grease on these bolts. Bit naughty, but I'm just going to move that out of the way for a second. Yep, so these are 8mm bolts. These don't have to be busting tight, they're just nipped up, nothing crazy. And done. Alright, we can put the anode back on the bottom. Alright. Yep, so we've got our bottom pin in, they're all tight with Loctite on them. Our pin in, our sensor in, we just got to put our little trim tab anode back on the bottom of the motor. no grease on these ones, guys. I never put grease on anything to do with my anodes. And that is done. So, final step is to run it up and down and make sure the oil level's right, and if not we might have to bleed it, but it doesn't appear to be. It's pretty cool, it come full of oil. I guess I'm glad it did for what I paid for it. Yeah. Make sure everything clears and nothing's catching, which it isn't. Sensors and the wires aren't getting crushed. All looking good. That is working like a charm. Very, very happy. Alright, we'll just take this plug out with a rag and make sure it's full of oil, and that's us. It's working perfectly. No need to bleed it. Doesn't appear to need bleeding. Yep, full of oil. We're leaving that alone. Get the bloody thing back in. There we go. Always check it on the safety stand. Check the oil level when it's sitting up there like that. Gets the right height for the oil in there. We're done. Put the towel back on and job done. Thanks for watching.